Dear God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, this book, my disease, these steps, and especially about you, dear God, so that I might have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help me see the truth. It's all yours, Tony.
Right on. Recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. Sobriety date April 8, 1989. I'd like to thank you, everybody, for being here, being a part of this, for all those that are making this happen. Tonight's really cool. We're looking at 6 and 7. So we're going to back up and look at the theme of the book, so like up to this point, which a lot, and it'll make it a lot easier to understand when we read, because a lot of people say, oh, 6 and 7 is only 2 paragraphs. Well, it's meant to be only 2 paragraphs. It's meant to just be a kind of acknowledgement and continuing on. It's not a pit stop. You know, it's not somewhere you spend a lot of time lingering and kind of pondering the big thing. So let's start off with where we got. So we looked at page 44, and we kind of realized that we needed this change. What change did they talk about? Was the psychic change or spiritual experience in order for us to recover from this illness that has us? We don't have it, it has us, right? And then in order to have this psychic change or spiritual experience, I needed to go through a course of action. And that's what the rest of the book is dedicated towards. So on the first, page 45, what does it say there, John? Lack of
Power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Obviously, but where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem.
So right away, they tell you that the concentration is on the solution, not on the problem. And as we pursue the solution, the problem gets dissipated. It gets solved. We don't work on it, right? You hear people say, I'm working on my alcoholism. What, are you still drinking? Because, so the whole idea is, my isms. Well, the isms is what they're talking about is the human condition, right? Because they talked about, in the preceding chapters, we've learned everything we need to know about alcoholism, about the body and the mind, right? Correct? We understand their understanding. We understand their understanding, what they mean by a power greater than ourselves. Where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's what this book is about. So we went through we agnostics. We find that this thing is deep down within. I would have never came up with any of those ideas. Anybody here? So we see that we're formulating a new conception on what they're talking about of getting access to this power that will create this change. We don't care what you call it, but the basis of it is getting access to this inner resource of strength that resides in every man, woman, and child, right? It's one of those things that makes us the human being kind of part. So when we get to working through all those pages and we get to page 63, we see here that they talk about formulating this relationship with something greater than me. And that's what I'm making a decision to do here, right? Is to pursue this course of action that we talked about in step 2 to get access to this power where it becomes personal to me. So we see step 3 as an idea, right? Of the possibility of the experience that awaits me if I went through the same course of action that they did. Does that kind of make sense? That's why it says we thought well before taking a step. Right? Making sure we could abandon ourselves. To abandon is to move into a new direction. Right? Getting rid of all our old ideas to formulate new ones. Right? And they talked about that in We Agnostics, right? The ability to shift our thinking, our ability to see things differently. So as we started this process in 4, it showed us that what we're starting to do is get access to this power where I start to see how it works by applying these prayers and these ideas to create a shift in my attachment to resentments, fears, and conduct, right? So you have to go through it in order to experience it. It's not one of those things by looking at it, you understand it. You have to actually start to experience it. And this is where you start to experience what they were talking about, right? This moves from the mental exercise that a lot of us spend in the cheese factory here trying to figure stuff out into this experience, right? And so by the time we get to 71, it talks about the summary, the conclusion, their hopes and the ideas, and the kind of experience what we could be hoping for if we've carefully followed directions. Whose direction? Theirs. This thing's designed to give us the same experience as they had. Right? So the conclusion of the step 4 is we hope on page 71.
We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you have made a good beginning.
So we see this as a beginning. That other guy, earlier in the book, he said he made a beginning, but he failed to enlarge in the spiritual life. So a lot of people feel good about this at this stage of the game. They've done their 4, they admitted to themselves, to God, and have yet to another human being, right? So we see here the grosser handicaps, what they're talking about in the human condition is the common manifestation of these things that caused our failure. And what are these common manifestations? And this will make more sense what they're talking about in 6 is, so they talked about on that page 64, they talk about we did exactly the same thing, right? You see that third paragraph?
Yeah, so page 64, kind of middle of the page. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure.
So we're looking for the things that caused our failure, yes?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know what they are yet, do I? I could think I know what they are, but I haven't done the exercise to really see of being convinced any life run on self-will could hardly be a success. I need to do the 4-step in order to really see that, right? It's not an intellectual exercise, right? Go ahead.
Oh, being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestation.
So you notice we looked at resentments. And then as they went through this, they talked about when harboring such feelings, these emotional deformities that we have. Here we're looking at it in resentments. Then they look at it in fear, right, is the second category. Then our sex conduct or conduct is the third one. And then harms is the fourth one. So we see all the attachment to most of our suffering is all around this category, right? Yes? These things, right? And so when I finish 71, I see these things, and which is really cool is in the third step prayer, it says, relieve me of the bondage of self, take away my difficulties, may I have victory over them. Now I have access to the recipe on how to do that, right? I have the spiritual recipe on how to create change within myself by looking at things differently through the application of prayer, right? Yep. And most of the people try to figure out how this works. We don't know how it works. It's a phenomenon. All I know is my life goes way better when I'm praying compared to when I'm not praying. Anybody?
Yeah.
Right? And it becomes very apparent when I'm not doing this. I start suffering from me again. Anybody? Right? And then the people around me start suffering. Starts with me and works outward. Who likes to be miserable alone? Right? Got to involve somebody. There's got to be an innocent bystander somewhere, right? So we see how we involve people, places, and things with these things that are happening inside of us based on our instincts, right? That creates self, right? Our social, our ambitions, our security. So I get a good picture of this, right? So now I'm fully comprehending what I couldn't see then, what they were talking about. And I'm bouncing back and forth a bit, but if you've done this, you're getting the idea here, right? So when they talk about this on page 60, they talk about here, I'm just going to read it, John. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. I can't see that before the fourth. They're talking in past tense. Now I see it. I see why I haven't been successful. I see these things that have caused my failure. I see these things that I've invited with people, places, and things, right, were the flaws in my makeup, right? And they're not talking about, makeup. They're talking about the things that make us, right? Just to be clear. So we see these things, these defects of character are the resentments, or the manifestation of self are resentments, fears, conduct, and harms. Yes, we have this thing. So on the next page, it reiterates what this is all about, because we're going to start thinking again. See, we want to take over. What's our first obsession is ourselves. I know it's hard to believe, right? But we're consumed with self-fixing self. How many people have been to a discussion meeting? It's all self-based. Acceptance is the answer. Not God, acceptance now, right? Let it go, turn it over, me, myself, and I, right? The unholy trinity. How I'm fixing me and causing problems as I go along. You ever notice the people who talk about acceptance have a lot of problems? But anyways, moving on, it's not about acceptance today, but I had to get that out of the way. Or some of you were wondering, when is he going to go on that thing? So it's done, right? Okay, so what do we do with all this stuff? So, page 72. Top paragraph.
All right. Page 72, into action. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it?
So the question marks for who? For you to stop and start thinking? No, they're going to answer that question. Anytime there's a question mark, they're going to answer it, so you don't have to stop and start pondering. How many people have been to those discussion meetings? Oh, question mark, let's ask the audience. It's not one of those things, right? Let's poll the audience, call a friend. What was that game show? Whatever, right? Poll the audience, right? I'll take a pass. Okay, so what do we do about it?
We have been trying to get a new attitude and a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path.
So, which is cool is a new attitude, right? We've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship. So, new conception. A new one on the overall formulating of this experience laid out by who? By them. So whose conception am I adopting is their idea of getting access to this power, and as I pursue the solution, I will suffer less from me. And when I pursue me, I suffer more from me. We see how that works now, yes? When I'm working on me, I'm working on the problem, yes?
Yeah.
But I didn't know that before. But now I know if I'm solution-oriented, my thinking has shifted, right? To my relationship with something greater than me, or gaining access to power, right? So we see that's the purpose of the fifth. And what's really cool is, at 75, the conclusion, again, they do the conclusion. If you've gone through this the way we've outlined in our experience, hopefully you're experiencing this, right? They do that all the way through it. They tell you what it looks like if you're experiencing it, and they tell you what it looks like if you're not experiencing it. Pretty cool, right? So, what they talk about here, and just to give you the idea, is on page 63, it says, most good ideas are simple. And this was the concept of the new and triumphant arch, which we pass to freedom. Remember that idea? They talk about passing to freedom through this archway. So we realize, where's this archway? We realize now it's within. Right? It's the shift from the Neanderthal to the being, spiritual being or human being, the shift from an instinct-based living to a spiritually based living. And I see how my whole energy shifts when I'm more inclined to be pursuing the spiritual solution than I am my own solution. Yes? Right? I see that now. The shift that happens in my energy when I'm spiritually based, I'm more in tune with people, places, and the world around me. When I'm instinct-based, I'm more conflict-based and on a heightened sense of awareness, and I have anxiety. You hear people say, I have an anxiety disorder. No, I have a thinking disorder based on self, the overconcentration of self. If I want to be free of that, I need to shift my thinking to pursue a spiritual remedy. Does that kind of make sense? So all the way through the fourth is the acknowledgement and the shift of something inside of me to look at things differently and to pursue that. To outgrow fear, to master resentment, to bring my conduct in alignment with what I feel is God's will for me through prayer and all that stuff, and which is pretty cool. So, it talks about here, returning home on page 75.
Page 75, 2/3 laid out. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour.
Think about that. Where we can be quiet for an hour. When was the last time you were quiet for an hour without being totally medicated. Even then you weren't quiet. The brain's going 100 miles an hour. You're just drool running down your mouth and you're still thinking. Anybody ever notice that? No matter how loaded you get, you're still thinking?
Yeah.
It just numbs it, right? So here, to be quiet, like Bill talked about the breeze flowing in, to be at peace. It's almost alarming the first time you experience to be quiet within yourself. Most people get alarmed by that. I remember the first time after my 5, I was kind of like, wow, this is different. Like I woke up to the sound of the things around me instead of the sounds of the things inside of me. Right? It was really interesting when I did my 5, it became clear this sixth sense was present. Right, this intuitiveness, this voice that I couldn't really hear before, it became clear to me, and nobody needs to explain it to me. I know what it sounds like when it happens within. And it's not this huge, long dialogue. It's very to the point, and I understand what it means. It's weird. I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like, I guess I'm going to explain it. Is I woke up and kind of, I was awake, but my eyes were closed, and I was kind of like, really acutely aware of the sound of the car going by in the street, what I never heard before. And I was at total peace as I lied there in the bed, like being present in my situation. And this voice said, you don't need to do that anymore. And I kind of was trying to figure out where it was coming from. It sounded weird, but it was within me. It wasn't within my thinking. It was something deep down within. And I went, what? Like, and I was still, I wasn't, I said, what? And then it said it again, you don't need to do that. And I kind of went, what? Like the third time. And it said it the third time, and I intuitively knew what it was talking. That voice, I reached over, grabbed the cigarettes that were on the night table. I handed them to the person I was with at that time in my life. And I said, I don't need to do this anymore. No withdrawal, no nothing. Nothing. I intuitively knew what that meant. Wild, eh? No withdrawal, no nothing. So, we talk about carefully reviewing
what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better.
So we know him better. What's that know? Is that not the cheese factory dialogue, is in here. There's something happening inside. And only you can experience for yourself, because anybody tried to explain it, they sound nuts. I think you sound like a nut bar. That's when in the spiritual appendix, it says all our members have tapped into an inner resource. Not some of all our members, with few exceptions, have tapped into this consciousness that they talked about on page 55. Deep down within every man and woman here, they talked about this thing that's been with us since birth. This thing, this intuitiveness that we stopped listening to somewhere along the line. This thing that's talked about, now we're in kind of dialogue with it, or we're in tune to it. Really cool. Go ahead.
Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we have admitted anything.
What do they mean by admitted? Admitted. Kept anything out of our 5. And you notice how many people's done a 5 here and kept something out of it, and your conscience will tell you. You didn't say this, you didn't say that. It's funny how your conscience will let you know the things that you don't want to know. I'm not going to say that. Your conscience says, hey, you, here's a memo. You left this out. Hey, you're not supposed to be telling on me. That's what it's kind of saying. And so this is where you would phone your sponsor, the person, say, hey, you know what? I left this out. Because we're on a life and death errand here. It's important, right? The humility, I need to do this. The warning was, if I leave this out, invariably I'm going to get drunk again. Right? So I need to really tell on myself here. Go ahead.
For we are building an arch through which we shall walk a free man.
So where's this arch?
Deep down within us. Right?
And we're walking through freedom. So now we have the recipe in order to get access to this, to have a different experience. Remember they talked about that in the 4th step, said to the precise extent that we permit these. Right? So some of us, we kind of like the idea of spending time on stuff that we shouldn't be spending time on. Anybody here? we found ourselves engaged in conversations within ourselves that we really should have interrupted a long time ago, but for some whatever reason, we engage in this kind of stuff that's detrimental to our spiritual condition and our emotional state. Anybody? And then you become aware of it, and sometimes you're engaged in it for a little while before you become aware of it. And when you become aware of it, that you're in this through an emotional attachment or a bondage or thing, is now you get to decide, do I initiate the formulation of the changing of the narration that's happening inside of me, or do I keep on feeding the narrator? Everybody knows what that is, right? Anybody have that sense of awareness? It said, no, I'm not done with this resentment. I'm not done punishing those people. But you're not done punishing you. That's what you're saying. I'm not done punishing you. Those people aren't around. How many people spend long dialogue with people that's not even around anymore? Reliving, refeeling, right? So go ahead.
Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand?
What are we building?
Arch within inside ourselves.
But also is a spiritual structure.
Yeah.
The arch is the entrance to the spiritual structure. The way this is put together is that energy field that we reside in. So when you're instinct based, you ever notice your energy field? The anxiety, the fear, and the apprehension. So that's the Neanderthal. When you step into the spiritual structure, it's a totally different experience. Right? So I know the difference now. It's kind of like, isn't that interesting, right? So, okay, let's go.
Top of page 76. If we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6.
It didn't work on. Notice it didn't say work on. It says we look at it. What are we looking at? Well, they're going to tell us what we're looking at, right? So what am I looking at in 6? Go ahead.
We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable.
That's the key, right? Willingness, right?
Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable?
What are all the things that we admitted are objectionable?
Resentments, fears, conduct, and our harms.
Yeah, and these emotional deformities, right? All this stuff, right? And some of that stuff is how we talk to ourselves, right? Some of us still punish ourselves. This is saying, well, what you're doing is bringing the past into the present, right? Is that right? Anybody? So that's not the idea here. The idea here is moving from the past into a new experience. So I see I'm still hanging on to some of these resentments. I'm still hanging. So let's see. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Can he now take them? Everyone of what? All these emotional deformities that I'm hanging on to. Anybody? Yeah, we all know what they are, right? So if we still, go ahead.
If we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God to help us be willing.
So interesting. People give you the impression that once they've done their 5 and their 6, they have no more problems. They're saying, hey, we still got problems. We're hanging on to some things. Maybe I'm engaged in some activity that is a little illegal because I have fear of my social ambitions and security. Maybe I'm being dishonest in this area. Maybe I'm still in some relationships I shouldn't be in. Maybe I'm still harboring some feelings against my parents or people around me, places and things that I'm not ready to let go of because I'm not done punishing them or me. Anybody?
Oh, yeah.
You want to see how spiritual you are? Go hang around with your family for a little while. Oh, there's some step 6. There's some step 6. Is like we're funny people. Anybody ever tell people they forgive them over and over and over and they do a list? You haven't forgiven them. Right? You're still harboring. So if we still cling to something we will not let go of, we ask God to help us be willing. So what does that look like? So when I was new in sobriety, my prayer was, God, I'm willing to let go of these things if you could replace it with something better. I want to let go of these, but I can't. I seem to be still attached to it. Right? So this here is those things that I'm aware of. There's a whole other group of things that I'm not aware of, that I'm still hanging on to because they haven't presented themselves yet. And that will be where step 11 comes in. These are just the things that I know, okay, I'm being dishonest here, here, and here, but there's some emotional deformities with people, places, and things that I don't know that are still curbing my personality, or I'm still hanging on to, or there's still some form of attachment to it because it's created a defect in my character or my response to life. It's created a personality shift or flaw or whatever you want to call it that I've become accustomed to. Does that kind of make sense? Right? It's become a defect of character. So these resentments, 90% of them are gone. But there's still some that are still present. And these so the resentments, fears, conduct start turning into defects. It's defecting my character, defecting my response or my situation in the present based on the past. Anybody have those things? So it's interesting. So this will turn into 11. We'll show you how that works. So I know I looked at this stuff. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm moving into a new place, but I'm still attached to some of this furniture. But look at that. There's some value in it still. I'm still a little warped in my attachment to it. Remember they talked about these values, the things I value? Somebody else looking at it will go, what the hell are you doing? What are you hanging on that for? Because I still have some emotional attachment to it. It's like my stuff back there. My wife gives me that small area for all the things that I have attachment to, the value. She thinks it's garbage. It's a no-fly zone for her. You stay away from that stuff. And when I look at this stuff, it brings me back to memories or situations, all the different films I've worked on. You look at it and say, what the hell, like Catwoman and Scooby-Doo. And so I look at this stuff and it's kind of like, it brings me back to that moment. But there's a couple other things up there that still give me a little heartache when I look at it. Like there's some of my brother's stuff that passed away a while ago. There's some of my dad's stuff up there. There's some attachment to stuff that still gives me bittersweet, but I still hold value on it. It's weird. That's the human condition, right? So that would reflect what's happening inside of us, right? That we'll get to. So I know what these things, I have a good idea what these things look like and what I'm watching for. Go ahead, when ready.
When ready, we would say something like this. My Creator, I am not willing that you should have all of me, good and bad.
So we see that step 6 is an ongoing, right? That it's going to carry into 11. Why? Because we ask God to help us be willing to let go of these things that seem to still be attached to us, right? So then, when ready, we said something like this. My Creator,
I am not willing that you should have all of me, good and bad.
So hold on. So what the hell? Is like what I'm doing is reconfirming my decision in step 3. Now is saying you got to be careful here, because when most people talk about step 7, they're talking about shortcomings or defects. Like the 12 and 12 really did this thing disservice. It was written by somebody else. I'm not going to get into that. It was a more Christian-based formulation of self-fixing self through a self-awareness. And I'm not going to get into that, right? It was written by Bill and somebody else. And the influence, it was written by a different writer than those that put the big book together. Right? But I'm not going to get into that, right? So now that that's done, and it was written 13 years after the fact, they had to write something, so they put self-fixing self in there, but I'm not getting into that. Okay, so.
I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows.
So now we're going to break it up a bit. It says, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. Why did they say good and bad? Why not just the good? I mean, just the bad. Because when you're thinking about yourself, who are you thinking about? to you. So there's one side of the coin, you're thinking about you. And then the good. And then on the other side of the coin, it's the bad. Right? And so when you concentrate and you put the coins near your eye, all you see is you. So there's three sides to a coin. The other side of the coin is the side. That's how much concentration you should be given to you. And the rest is your idea with his power, good and bad. So why do they say good and bad? Because I'm in the world to play the role he assigns. When does the assignment happen? You hear people say, what's God's will for me? To play the role he assigns. When does that happen? That happens in the fear of the acknowledgement of staying in the present, to being where my feet are, doing the next right thing. When the phone rings or somebody asks me to do something I can do, I go do it. I don't know why. When something says go to this meeting, I don't know why it says to go to that meeting, but I'll find out when I'm there. If we're his agents, right? All I need to know is when an intuitive says go somewhere, I go there. Right? And because there's somebody somewhere making a phone call to the universe for help, I get the memo, I don't know what it is, and I go there. And then there's somebody there waiting. Right? Like I had some work to do and something said, my bag, someone said, go to the meeting yesterday. I said, I got stuff to do. I said, okay, I went to the meeting. There was a new guy there. Right? Got a big one, got all the work, so I went there, right? And stuff like you guys all heard the story. When I'm in Hawaii or anywhere I go, something says wait, pause, or if I get delayed, there's usually a reason for it because the connection that I'm supposed to be making hasn't happened yet. Like I've had weird stuff, right, that we'll get into 11, but if I'm trusting God that he's monitoring my steps, then the moments turn into hours, the hours turn into days, the days turn into weeks, the weeks turn into months, and then sooner or later I look at I'm living life far beyond anything I could ever created on my own. How did I get here? Trusting and relying on God. Where's the only place I could trust and rely on God is in the present. Right? But I can't be present if I'm still harboring stuff from the past or I'm worried about the future, can I? So if I'm really trusting and relying on God, then I need to just be present and know the greater good will come. Does that kind of make sense? Whatever, take care of all my needs. The contract on page 63, if we stay close to him and perform his work well, he'll provide all that we need. Notice it didn't say want. All that we need. And that's where you start discovering this as you go through it. Go ahead. Oh, I pray that you now remove from me every single defect. So we see how these things are warping my personality and how really I can't be used to other people if I'm consumed with self, can I? I can hardly stand being around me, never mind anybody else, when I'm having a resentment full of fear, anxiety, projection in the future, having a dialogue with people that aren't present. Anybody? Stop me anytime. Right? Anybody?
Yeah.
Right? So, but if I'm present, how do I know when I'm present? The moment I acknowledge it, I'm present. It can't be that simple. Yes, it is. It's that simple. May you find them now. When's now? Now. Well, when does now change? It never changes. The only thing that changes is you. I'm out of the now. See you later. Going on a short trip. I'll be back shortly. You're still sitting in your chair, right? Whoa, that was uneventful. Okay, come back to the now. You want to shake your thinking? Where you got to come back to the now. You don't like the way you're feeling? You got to come back to here. Be present. Apply the serenity prayer. Good. Go ahead.
So grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding.
So that's it. Grant me strength. What's my problem? Lack of power. What am I praying for? Step 11 says, I pray about things, not for things. So, look at the wording here. Right? Grant me strength as I go from here to do your bidding. Amen. We have then completed. Completed. What does completed mean?
Done.
Yeah, not some of the relationship you people been in. It's not quite over yet. Haven't got the restraining order. There still might be hope. Right? Completed, done, over. It's like once you got the bill in the mail and you paid it, it's done. If you got it back, say, I've already paid that bill. You don't revisit it, right? It's done. Completed. That's a word you should look up. It's really interesting how they use. So the only thing I'm moving forward with is the things I'm still carrying in 6 that I'm aware of or I'll become aware of. Yes, is interesting how this looks at that, right?
Yeah.
So as we go through this, we'll go back to, go ahead. Now
we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9.
Let's look at it. Let's look at it. Right? You hear people, oh, the steps are in order for a reason. Yes, we're going to look at 8 and 9, but we don't want to go out unsupervised, do we? You hear people say, I can't do 10, 11 before I do my 9s. That's ludicrous. Right? You're going out unsupervised. So let's look at 8 and 9. We read through that as I finished, 6 and 7. I'm looking at 8 and 9. I read through it and all the different aspects of my step 8 that I got from my step 4 that I might have challenges with. But as I read through this, is interesting. Okay, yeah. So then they come to the promises, right? Which is a summary of the experience of all the steps, not just some of the steps. It's not the 9-step promises. They talk about the promises in step 9, but they're not the result of 9 steps. Whoa, that's interesting, right? Because if we can get the promises by doing 9 steps, how many people would move on? No, I'm good. I'm good, and which is the problem. So they talk about here, it looks like we're going to read it. If we're painstaking.
Page 83, guys. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development.
So slow down a bit. Of this phase. So there's multiple phases happening as we're doing this phase of what? Of our amends. There's other developments happening at the same time. You ever watch a building going up? You notice there's a whole bunch of things happening at the same time? In order for the completion, to get the plumbing happening, the wire happening, the foundation happening, there's all these people involved in the. So this phase over here, this phase needs to be done before we get to the next phase, right? Which is the next floor. But in order to get there, a whole bunch of things need to be happening simultaneously. Okay, go ahead.
If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through.
Halfway through what?
I'm going to stay step 9, living in 11, working.
Yeah, halfway through this phase, through the amends, right? So somewhere along there, we're going to, right, we'll be amazed. Not somewhat thrilled, amazed. When people talk about shit that amazes them, especially people like us, because it takes a lot to amaze us. Right? Huh? Okay, right?
We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others.
Feeling of uselessness, self-pity was...
Okay.
Sorry, guys. We'll see how our experience better as the feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. I don't know what's going on there. Somebody remove them. I'm busy.
So go ahead.
We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change.
It's pretty wild when you think about that, right? Like this thing, this transition that's happening. So if you look at Bill's story, right? Bill was talking about his relationship with something greater than him before he even left the hospital, right? And as he left the hospital, he was plagued with waves of depression that nearly drove him to drink, right? He didn't finish all of his amends. He was having still a problem with all these people, places, and things, right? He was still, right? Nearly drove. What would save the day?
Work with another alcoholic.
That's the recipe. The recipe is this is not something that we get stagnant in. It's something that we learn in the development as fast as we can to apply all these things, right? So self-seeking will slip away. Go ahead.
our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us.
So this is starting to sound like a psychic change or spiritual experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
The same kind of idea they gave us in the spiritual appendix in the back of the book. The same idea that they gave us earlier, there is a solution, right? And the sacrifice, but the price had to be paid. The summary of this phenomena that we could expect as the result of these steps. Step 12 says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Not some of them. The result of these steps. Right? These spiritual principles, right? So in order to do my 9s, I better be connected to something greater than me, and I better have access to helping new people as I go through these things, because I won't survive me if I can't. Right? So we see how this is all happening. You'll follow me in a second here, okay? Go ahead.
We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us.
So, and then when we read this, and as we read step 11, they talk about this intuitiveness that we need to develop. What are they talking about here? Because it's a summary. It's an overall experience in the phase of our development. This is what they experience as the result of all these steps, not just 9 of them. See how the changing, see what happens when we look at things unsupervised? We start changing things, and then we start telling people in the fellowship this is what it is, and it moves away from the idea of what the book's saying. Right? Go ahead.
We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves.
To suddenly realize something means it's already been taking place, but you'll realize, you'll tune into it. It's like, wow, this relationship's been happening. Remember what they talked about in the spiritual appendix? They talked about people around us will become more aware of the change than we are. So again, we're the last ones to know. Right? Usually, before we did this, that we're trying to go around telling everybody how much we changed, and everybody around us saying, we're open. We'll let you know. Right? Do you have a 20? No. Right? So it's kind of like, they'll know. Right? So what, in essence, what it's kind of saying is, in the spiritual appendix in the back of the book, is the people around us will start experiencing the promises. They'll start having a new freedom and a new happiness. Right? And the anxiety will start to diminish when dealing with you. They'll start answering the phone on the first or second ring instead of letting it go to voicemail all the time. Anybody? They'll stop hiding shit when you show up. Okay, good. They'll stop doing this is what I used to love. Anybody get the sniff test? They kind of get the hug and the see. Okay.
Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
So what's the work they're talking about is the spiritual concentration of looking at the solution and not the problem, the shifting. We don't work on problems. There's nowhere did it ask us to work on ourselves or work on a problem or focus on anything other than our relationship with something greater than ourselves. I'm seeking power. It's the only thing it's asked us to do all the way through this thing. Look at the obstacles that are in the way. What do I do with it? I pray. When I become aware of it and I'm willing to look at it differently. Kind of pretty cool, right? So I'm becoming solution-oriented, not problem-oriented. Right? And so what does it say? This thought. You notice it didn't say this group of actions. This thought brings us to step 10. What thought? Of the promises and the step 9. Like all this stuff that we've read from, right after the 7-step prayer, we've completed it. Now we get a summary of what we need to look at, what we expect 8 and 9, some of the challenges that we're going to have that we'll revisit later when I do my list and I seek counsel with something greater than me in 11, right? Because I'll seek counsel before engaging in this stuff, and then I'll check in with another human being who may have experience around this. So all the way through is preparing, planning, and seeking counsel with something greater than me before I engage. Grant me strength as I do your bidding. Grant me strength as I do these things that are terrifying me. Right? This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests what?
We continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along.
Because it hasn't been a year. We just finished our 5. Like we just finished 5, 6, and 7. It's not 10 months later. Oh, let's look at step 10. I just finished step 7. Continue what I learned. What did I learn? So continue to do. So technically, what it should be saying then, if we want to work the stuff, continue to do 4 and 5. Yes? Continue to do 4, 5, and 6. Oh, these things that are blocking, these things that are causing my deformity, continue to do these things. Okay, go ahead.
I'm making a note. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past.
Vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. This thought, and then now it's building on that idea. Now it's giving us an overview of the whole thing. You got to look at the way it's laid out here. It's like, okay, this thought brings us to 10. We're going to continue to do these things. Now we're going to give you this is the rest stop. Let's look at the map. Let's look at where we're going. Let's look at the whole purpose of this thing in design. Let's revisit what this is all about. That's what it's kind of saying. It's like before we move on to, is everything in check? Do we understand what the next phase of our development is and what that is, right? Okay, go ahead.
We have entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness.
That's the first instruction of our next function, right? Because everything up to 5 was to get us into this relationship with a power greater than ourselves, right? We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. We just entered. We're just here. If you kind of look at the way this is exciting stuff, right? If you really see what we're about to embark, it's really really cool the way the book's outlined. That's why we do the set-aside prayer, because this is where people start getting steel on steel. This is where people's gears start getting cranked and stop listening. This guy's crazy. What does the book say? Our next function is what?
Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter.
Of what? Understanding and effectiveness of what? What's my next function to grow? Understanding and effectiveness of what? Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness of me working on me?
No.
Of my relationship with a power greater than myself. So what's lacking in that relationship is not the relationship, is my connection and understanding of it.
Yep.
God don't need no work here. My spiritual connection don't need no work. This may say, wait, what I'm saying here, what I need to become aware of is my connection to it. Like the dimmer switch, right? On my I was going, man, the lights don't work in here, and I thought my wife came in, turned on the dimmer switch. I went, oh. And that's kind of like this. Our next function is remove the dimmer switch, right? Just put some light on it, right? Get some power happening to this. You ever see how a dimmer switch is? The lack of power. But when you hit the dimmer switch and access the power, the light becomes more illuminating. And this is kind of, as I seek this power, as I seek this to grow in understanding and effectiveness, illuminate. So the only limitation to this whole thing is, again, me, what they described in We Agnostics. The only limitation to this thing is my thinking and the limitations I place on it. Wild, right? Because if it's the access to the fourth dimension and the spirit of the universe, and it'll provide all that I need, the only limitations to this is how much access am I giving myself to this power. Whoa, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. It will always materialize if we throw more of that light switch on. Okay, go ahead.
This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime.
So they're giving us a summary here of the whole. It should continue for a lifetime. It's not an overnight matter. You notice they stopped talking about you here. Oh, so the step 10 that we do every day is less than half a paragraph. The rest is all about how's your relationship with this power. When you hear people talking about step 10, they don't talk about their relationship with God, do they? And formulating, developing, and building, right? They don't talk about that. Funny how self takes over, how subtle it is for the idea of self-fixing self. I'm working on 10, 11, and 12. Oh, you are. Oh, good for you. I'm working on my relationship with something greater than me. Whoa, that's the whole focus, isn't it? It's not. Yep. They didn't say you should be doing 10, 11, and 12 here. No, our next function is growing understanding and effect. That's treatment center stuff. 10 and 11 and stuff is to impress the newcomer. Because those of us realize, well, you're not doing 10, 11, and 12 every day. If you're doing 12, you're doing all of it. If you're doing 11, you're not really doing 12. And if you're doing 10, you're not doing 11 and 12, are you? Okay, this is where I make friends. Okay, go ahead. Our next, that's worth reading again. Our next function
is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter.
Okay, so this goes into the rest of the book. When you read on, it says it takes years to tear down old structures to build new ones in its place. Tear the structures that self-built to build spiritual structures in its place by reliance on something greater than me. Okay, go ahead. This is great stuff. When you really see what it's saying here, this is the game changer. Go ahead.
So, continue for a lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear.
Watch for it. Didn't say work on it. Watch for these things because they're blocks. When these things present themselves again as you're cleaning up the past is because there's an old defect of character becoming present again. So watch for these things as they crop up. They're not new. So for something to crop up, it means it's still present. Yes?
Yep.
Right? It's representing itself. As we clean up the past, how will these things represent themselves? Is my thinking and emotional attachment to these things with people, places, and things. As I go make my amends, there's the way I used to look at it and a new way I look at it. If I want to stick with the new way of looking at it, I better be spiritually connected. Because the old way of looking at things and the old way of treating these people will represent themselves if I'm not connected. Anybody have to make an amend for an amend here? Yeah, okay. So we don't need to explain that again, do we? Okay, right. Okay, go ahead.
So when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code.
They just did a summary of our whole program of recovery there. They just did a summary, but I'm only on step 10. No, this is an overview of what the whole thing looks like and what we need to move toward next. Okay, go ahead.
And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned.
Okay, here we go. We're going to have fun here. I was hoping I'm going a lot of different places, but it is by this time. People go, oh, it's the step 10 promise. It is not the step 10 promise. It's talked about in step 10. By what time? By this time, sanity will have returned. By what time? They already gave us the timeline if you go back up the page. If you're not too sure what one part of the book is saying, look at the conversation leading into it. Right? By the time we're halfway through. Oh, by this time, sanity will have returned. Through what? Through this phase of our development. As we cleaned up the past, as we sought to develop our next function, as we worked with other people, as I became conscious of His will and His presence, right? As I did these things, by this time sanity will have returned. By what time? Well, they gave us that window in the spiritual appendix, what usually takes place in a few months. So they're saying here, within that few months window, if I'm painstaking about this phase of my development, painstaking means to operate with purpose, to walk with purpose, not in pain. Oh, I'm good, I'm doing my night, I'm in so much pain, I'm pain. That's not the painstaking you're talking about. If you're in pain, you got too much self involved again. Right? So if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. This thought brings us to step 10. Continue to watch for these things. This should continue for a lifetime. Our next function is grow an understanding of effectiveness. What's that? That's step 11, right? As I'm doing 11, as I'm doing 12, right? By this time, somewhere along the line, this problem will be removed. But I don't know when it'll be removed because I can't see, feel, and touch it. But I will have a psychic change or spiritual experience where I no longer have an alcoholic mind. I'll have recovered from this thing because I don't know when this thing will return and I don't know when it's left. It's a phenomenon. It's a condition of my mind that I can't see, feel, and touch. So I'm trusting the process where they get into this daily reprieve here. So this week, read what it talks about is the formulating of this relationship and being careful not to rest on my laurels. And then when they get down here, it says on page 85, we're going to go over this again, but just to summarize where we're going with this, our next function is grow and understand. We're still reading through this. It's an idea, right? It says here, what does it say? Much has already been said on page 85, bottom.
Okay, the 3/4 of the way down. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions.
Which would be, right, so far, it would be the only thing that we've done is up to 6 and 7. Right? We've got that connection. Right? That's the purpose of 5, the removal of the blocks, right? That's the whole purpose of this thing, is to formulate the basis of this relationship. Our next function is grow and understand and faith. So have the basis of it, the starting of, if we've carefully followed directions, whose direction? Their directions. Right? What does it say? We've begun
To sense the flow of His Spirit into us.
So what did this say in the 5th step? We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. I'm still reading through this. The way it's designed is, I've read through this, I have a basis of understanding. I could refer back to it again, but the basis of understanding is trying to get me to a certain place of reliance on something greater than me and formulate and build on that relationship. Yes?
Yep.
Right? So,
to some extent, we have become God conscious.
and that's what all our members have talked about. That's what the spiritual experience talked about. That's what this book is about, is enable you to have access to this power. Lack of power was our dilemma. Where's this power? Deep down within. Our more religious members call it a God consciousness, intuitiveness, sixth sense. I have an inkling that it's there. It may be faint, but I know I sense it now because I got all that shit out of the way. Yes?
Yep.
But anybody who hasn't done it yet is going, what are you talking about? Well, it says if you've carefully followed directions, you will sense this thing. I don't need to explain it to you anymore. If I need to explain it to you, then you've missed something. You need to go back and see what part of the path you took over. Because there's a subtlety in the takeover of influence, where we seek our own influence instead of seeking something greater than us. Right? Okay, so go ahead.
We've begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action.
If somebody says to you, but you must go further, that doesn't mean bring everything with you, that you got to go further. Like if you stay where you are, you're in deep shit, but we must go further. So this week, read from 6 and 7 on. Right? Look at what they're talking about in step 10. It's all about our relationship, the pitfalls and the dangers of not developing this relationship. Right? And the pitfall of you taking over you and misunderstanding this whole thing and resting on your laurels. Mistaken feeling better for getting better. So there's warnings here. So then you notice, which is really cool, you notice it says when we retire at night on the next page. Why didn't it say in the morning? Because that night you're starting step 11. Not a year from now, not a month from now, because I can't afford to go without this relationship. Right? What keeps me sober is my relationship with a power greater than myself. I still don't have a choice. What I have is a daily reprieve. So it says when we retire at night, upon awakening, as we go through the day, blah, 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 all the way through, right? And on the next page, it says we alcoholics.
What are you talking about? What
Page 88, last paragraph.
Page 88, last paragraph. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in a simple way we have just outlined.
Step 11, right? Step 11. Simple way they just outlined is step 11. It's the only 24-hour spiritual clock that we have. It puts it all together. It's one purpose is the relationship now. And these principles that keep me connected. It's not about working the steps anymore. The steps are about getting me connected. The connection is about this relationship. Once I have this relationship, is the formulating of that all the way through 11. When we kind of look at 11, if you kind of read what it's saying, it kind of reiterates that's what this whole thing is about, right? It is really formulating this relationship, right? And seeking this power all the way through here. It's been hinting about that idea, right? This formulation. And when we read step 11 on page 59, it says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. When we looked at 7, that's what it was kind of the conclusion to the moving on, where it says we've now completed step 7 with the idea of good and bad, right? And then when we read through 10, it's kind of interesting how much emphasis a lot of people put on step 10 when there's really not much in step 10 in regards to the application part of it, right? It's an overview of where we're coming from and where we're going and what it looks like. Right, it's like a travel brochure kind of thing, right? It's kind of like this is what the whole thing is about, and all the way through here, where it talked about this thought brings us to step 10. We kind of talked about that, and it says what our next function is, so that we covered that, and it says continue to watch for these things, to continue the formula we learned in step 4. Right, because we learned the spiritual formula in step 4 of meditation. Being aware of shift, like an energy shift within inside of us from an instinct base to a spiritual base, the ability of being an observer, which was really new for a lot of us, and being able to sit quietly and allow our consciousness to speak to us, right? And we learned how to do that all the way through it. And when we got to the fear part, it was suggesting that we've started this relationship. Right? That we seek this power when we go through, and it learned the recipe. Remember, the recipe was acknowledge, pray, and redirect. Right? So that's the theme to this whole thing. So when we get down on page 85, we talked about that too. It says, a lot of people say, oh, the step 10 promises or the step 9 promises. They're not the step 9 or step 10 promises. They're talked about there, but they're not... It's like saying, okay, we just read step 10, I should be restored to sanity. But it says by this time sanity will have returned. We established what that kind of means based on the book's presentation by the time I'm halfway through, right? And this phase of my development. So what does it say? We're going to start on page 85. It's easy.
Alrighty. Page 85, just above the middle of the page. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do.
So that laurels is a sense of accomplishment. I've achieved what I've hoped for. Now I could kind of rest. I know nobody's ever done that here. Kind of rest on their laurels, right? We're all keeners, right? But we've done it. More than is just like having enough money in the bank. You take a couple days off of work. Kind of rolls to the same thing. Compared to having no money in the bank and rent's due, you got to get busy. Does that kind of make sense? After a while, like, you get more, you look at your bank account, and all that other stuff, and you kind of get relaxed and you can afford sick time off or whatever, holidays, blah. So this is kind of like the same thing on a spiritual edge, right? But there's no holidays. Rent's due every day, right? Go ahead.
We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition.
So are we still dealing with alcoholism?
No.
No, by this time sanity will have returned. They talk about the problem has been removed. That was the idea presented in step 2. Right? As long as I have an alcoholic mind, I'll continue to experience the step 1 promise, which is I'll continue to drink. Right? Remember they use that guy, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I've never seen one case recover. But once they've experienced this recovery or recovered from this condition, they're no longer suffering from alcoholism. People lose their stuff. They're like, what do you mean we're not suffering from alcoholism? No, because if we're still suffering from alcoholism, that means we have an alcoholic mind. That means we're in deep trouble. Right? So here, what are we left with if we're not dealing with alcoholism anymore? We're left with the human condition. Right? And we establish that in step 4, 5, and 6, what the human condition looks like. Right? Okay, go ahead.
Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities.
So we have a rough idea what that is, what God's will for us and all that, but I haven't learned the mechanics on how to do that. They're giving me an overview, right? They got to show me how to do that. How do I do that? Because so far in your thinking, how many people just think about God in the morning or night or when you get jammed in? It's not a working part of the mind, is it? You mention it at every meeting you go to. You do 10, 11, and 12. And the only time you prayed was that day during the Serenity Prayer. But when we kind of realize how much time we spend unsupervised in the day, it's kind of really interesting how much time we're still in counsel with self. So the idea of this and being able to do it is two different things. Right? Go ahead.
How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly.
Constantly. What does constantly mean? Once a week, once a month? Constantly. Right? So that means if you're upright, breathing, and thinking, you're probably going to have some conflict in the day and then looking to involve other people. Here's where they're saying, right, we need to create a shift, right? A spiritual shift, right? Go ahead.
We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will.
So you hear people say, I do step 3 every day. Well, you need to get into stage 2 recovery. Stage 2 recovery is where you're seeking counsel with this relationship, right? And you're exercising your will along these lines, what you'd think He would have us do or be. They talked about that in the 4th step, right? They talked about, so here, they're saying, in other words, in 3, I said, here, look after this for me. Now they're saying, here, you could have it back. Right? In other words, it's a nice way of saying, quit blaming me for everything. Take responsibility. Because nothing happens by mistake. We see that that's true. We're the cause to 90% of it. Right? Nothing happens by mistake. Right? That's why we owe all these amends. Right? It wasn't God's doing. It was self-will run riot. Right? So here, I get to formulate this relationship. I see the benefit of this relationship. Right? So I'm a participant in it's like the beginning of the marriage. It's a lifelong thing here. Before I was dating, the process of between 4 and where I'm at now was the engagement. Now is the marriage. It's going to continue for my lifetime here. I'm going to continue to cultivate and develop this relationship to what? To grow in understanding and effectiveness. Right? Because I see that my sobriety is contingent on this relationship, not on my knowledge. Right? Not on the mechanics either. It's the shifting from working these steps to developing this relationship. See the shift in ideas and thinking? It's the shift from working on myself and working on my defects and working on my problems to working on my relationship. And let's see what that looks like. Go ahead.
For anybody's new, bottom of 85. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power.
True, right?
Yep.
So here's the qualifier. It's the if factor. It's the most, I think it's one of the biggest words in the book. If, right? So if I've done all these things, then it puts me in a different position, right? Go ahead.
If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action.
And the first time they started really mentioning this was in We Agnostics. You hear a lot of people say they feel they don't. We Agnostics sets up the whole theme to the whole thing. Where this power is located, how to get access to it, what's in the way of it, and all. It's an overview of what our struggles are and what our challenges is in our thinking, right? And then the obstacles that block us off from this and clearing away the ideas. In there, we see our belief system, that we're some result of everything we believe, feel, and we worship, right? We do worship things, we value things, and all. And so this kind of determine our experience in our life. So if we want a new experience, we see that the shift that they talked about in the 4-step had to be paramount. It had to take precedent. I had to kind of put effort into the shifting of my ideas to new ideas and incorporating this as a working part of the mind that they'll get into shortly here. So, but
we must go further, and that means more action.
So notice it didn't say, well, and we're going to, right, continue. It says, but we must go further. So that means if I was to stop, I'd become stagnant and the insanity of alcohol would return. I would mistake feeling better for getting better. And I would start resting on my laurels without even realizing it. Meaning I'm in counsel with myself. I'm working on this. I'm working on that. I'm doing this. I'm checking in with my sponsor. I'm checking in with the meetings. I'm. Right? And then you hear people say, I got drunk because I stopped going to meetings. That meetings had nothing to do with it. You're getting drunk either way. Right? I got drunk because of this. I got drunk. No, you got drunk because, one, you didn't formulate this relationship to experience this psychic change or spiritual experience, or two, you didn't cultivate and develop it. That's why they're saying we must go further. So what step 10 is like you're sitting in the driver's seat now, right? They go, who's driving your bus? You're driving your bus. What we lack is lack of power. We have a new route. We have a new set of directions. Where do I want to take my bus today? Do I want to go this way or do I want to go that way? You hear people say, who's driving your bus? Indicating, well, God's driving it. Well, no, you're driving it. What you're asking for is the power to go the right way, right? To forge a new path. Does that kind of make sense? To get out of the groove that I'm living in, to move in a new direction, takes effort, right? And so what they're talking about here, you're sitting there and you're about to take the car from the field or the parking lot onto the road. You're going to put everything that you learned together and you're having that pep talk. Okay, when you get on the road, this is what you got to be mindful of this. You got to be mindful of that. You got to take care. You got to read the signs. You got to read the mirrors. You're going to put it all together to be successful, right? This is the road test now. I don't know. That's the best way I know how to describe it. Right? It was all compartmentalized in bits and pieces, the signal. So now you're going to put it all together. And you're not going to concentrate on one single aspect of that. You need to concentrate on all of it. Right? And take corrective measures as necessary. Does that kind of make sense? So when you're driving, you're kind of like, you're really and then after a while you become relaxed and it just becomes a working part of the mind. Does that kind of make sense? Right? And then you do your road test. That's the psychic change or spiritual experience. Then you develop these principles so you maintain your license. Right? You maintain these principles so you maintain the spiritual connection. Right? And so anybody ever driving a storm here? Or been in a car when someone is driving? You notice what happens is you turn down the radio, the noise.
Yeah.
So that would be like quieting your mind. You sit up and everybody in the car becomes quiet. You ever notice that? And everybody's looking and that's kind of, you sit and then you're becoming focused on the principles you learned to sustain the rough area you're in. Does that kind of make sense? You take correct, and so that's what we're going to do spiritually here because they just talked about that, right? The overview of the human experience here and moving it into a spiritual one. Okay, so we come to step 11. Go ahead.
Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day.
So that's interesting. You notice when we retire at night is the night we finish 6 and 7. It's the same night. You read through 8 and 9. It's the same night. Otherwise, it would say, when you're done your 8s and 9s, upon awakening. You know, right? You can't afford. There should be no interval, no commercial between, no halftime between step 7 and starting 11. Right? It's kind of like it's right away, because remember it talked about resting on our laurel. Like my lifeline's totally dependent on my relationship with this power. I know that. Otherwise, I'm drinking again because I've had the step 1 experience. If I just have a problem, then I can get to it later. But if I've had the step 1 experience where suddenly I'm drinking again when I plan never to drink again, I know my relationship or my sobriety is contingent on this relationship, right? So when we retire at night, what do?
We constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid?
So question mark. So now you get to answer it. Finally, you get to participate, right? The question mark's for you. And so why you don't do a check? Anybody ever see those step 11 worksheets or checklists that people do at night? You don't do that. Don't do those. Why? Some people, why? Because what you're doing is you're doing a mental exercise. It's not about a mental exercise. Here, you're sitting quietly at night and you're reviewing your day and you're allowing your consciousness to speak to you. You know what? You're a bit of a dick there. Or you know what? You should have handled yourself. Your conscience will tell you, right? And so we're resentful, right? Selfish, dishonest, or afraid, or any other emotional deformity that I've experienced that day, right? So then what do? Do we owe an apology?
Have we kept something to ourselves but should be discussed with another person at once?
Yeah, mostly. Like I hear everybody say, I do 10, 11, and 12 every day. Most of us are very slow at correcting things that we do wrong. Anyway, you know what? Like I could know, like tonight I'll you know what? And I'll take 2 days to make an amends. I don't do it promptly. I really got to work into it. Anybody? How many people in relationships here? Right? And we're people, like we do it. We're carriers. We're resistant to change, but we do it because we have to, right? Okay, go ahead.
Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better?
Well, that's interesting. That's a question mark. What could we have done better? Why are they asking me what could I have done better? Well, was it self? Was it instinct that was taken over that created a problem here? Or was I praying and meditating on what I should do about that situation? Did I pause? And the other one is wait. Why am I talking? Like, was I talking when I should have been listening? Right? Was I practicing humility or was I driven by, right? So it's interesting. So what I do is I sit quietly and it'll come to me. Go ahead.
Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time?
Yeah, that's why most people don't like step 11. It puts you right on you. I like step 10, where I'm thinking about myself all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others.
And so what falls into that category that my sponsor taught me was, how do you talk to yourself during the day? How do you talk to yourself? You know, anybody have that chatter, that demeaning, that kind? You wouldn't allow somebody else to talk to you that way. Why are you talking to yourself that way? You know what? You're catching this, right? Because that would diminish when you're stuck in self and you're beating yourself up. How connected are you? No, you're getting back to instinct based here. So what they're talking about. So this is interesting. So I find out in the day, you know what? I wasn't too kind here. I wasn't too I talked shit to myself today, and it wasn't. I didn't do things as I was hopeful. So this is interesting. So step 6 is stuff that continues to move forward from my past. Things that have shaped my personality. A shortcoming is I've fallen short of the mark of what I would like to achieve. Right? So that means based on today's stuff, I acted or responded in a certain way. That's not being carried forward from the past. Right? So when I deal with certain people, places, and things, I see some of my personalities already formed based on past events. And it's moving forward. Does that kind of make sense? How many people have that? We realize there's today's stuff, and then there's yesterday's stuff that's being re-present today. Anybody have that? 2 people. Okay, but for the rest of okay, right? So I need to determine the difference. Why? Because step 6 asks me to be willing to have God remove these things. I still see I'm hanging on to some of these things. They're resurfacing in these moments. Or as I'm doing my step 9s, these ill feelings or ill thoughts are resurfacing, right, in regards to these people, places, and things. Because remember, I'm still starting my step 9s here, right? And then it'll get to a place soon, which may sound kind of weird, what all you're dealing with is today. There is no yesterday stuff. There's no tomorrow stuff. It's today's stuff, which is the whole point of this whole exercise, to be living in today. I mean, it's a pretty spectacular experience, right? Okay, go ahead. So we got all this stuff. Your list is your list. Your consciousness talk to you. This is interesting. Go ahead.
After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken.
So who are you talking to here now? Yourself or a power greater than you?
Power greater than you.
Yeah, you're saying, God, look, forgive me for whatever, right? So that means the slate's cleared now. I'm not carrying it forward anymore. And I got to remind myself that I'm not carrying it forward anymore, right? And so what corrective measures shall be taken? I was 16 years sober when I seen that. What do you mean, what corrective measures shall be taken? I kind of went, I've never heard anybody talk about that in meetings. Oh, sorry, they say how I'm working on myself. That's not what they're saying here. What they're saying corrective measures is, how did my instincts take over in this situation? And how could I bring God into this situation? An example. I'm coming up to my 14-year anniversary with my beautiful wife. She's a normie, and she deals with things a lot different than I deal with things, right? So we were dealing with some finances, which is step 6 stuff for me, right? And so we went to talk about finances, and I started getting agitated, and I lost my temper, and it made her uncomfortable, right? And then I apologized, and then the next week I did it again. And then the next week I did it again. And now she's having anxiety in regards to talking to me about these things. I've let it go, I think. But I'm very unapproachable in this area. So my wife says, when you get upset like that, it gives me anxiety. I said, I don't want to make you upset. Right? And so it kind of made me feel bad that she was carrying those. I was changing our inner how we reacted with each other in the financial area of our relationship. So how would I do different? So when I sat and I did 11 around that, what corrective measures shall be taken? I had to go through the situation and realized I started having an energy shift. And what I tried to do was contain it. And as she was speaking about these finances and asking for money and all this other stuff in order for the household stuff, right? I had my wants, so I started getting agitated, and I went to the circus, the cheese factory in my mind, right? And I started playing all this different scenarios, and the more I tried to not get upset, the more upset I got. And then I couldn't contain it anymore. I became agitated. Anybody have that kind of experiences with life? Right? And the more I tried to contain it, the worse it got. And then it got to a place where I couldn't contain that energy anymore. Right? The pressure, it became external. If you ever kind of realize when you have too much energy, it has to show up in one way or another. Slamming a door, saying something, swearing. When you're driving, anybody ever notice that? Like when the energy becomes so, it has to move somewhere. Right? And so this is where they kind of talk about mastering resentment. So I realized I started having this emotional shift and I started becoming instinct-based. So when I sat down with her again, I said, look, could we make, what do you call it? A bit like a business meeting, right? Could we arrange for a business on Sunday? Could we get together on Sunday so we both know what we're going to talk about? And could you help me work through this, that when I'm starting to feel this agitation, I'm going to pause, I'm going to pray, and I'm going to work through this so we can have a different experience with this. Can you help me do that? Or remind me that I need to keep myself in check? And so I went through it the first time, and I felt the energy shifting. I went to the serenity prayer. I asked for a moment as I regrouped. I brought God into my experience. I acknowledged it. We talked about it. And that was the last time probably, so I'm 30, so that was almost 15 years ago. That was the last time we had a problem around finances. So now she goes, can I have a check? I go, here you go. Right? And sometimes I still have to pray when handing it to her, but she said, you can let it go now. Just give me a second. Does that kind of corrective? So imagine if I was doing step 11 every night, because I need to find a way. Step 11 is to keep me spiritually in check. It lets me know when I'm off base. The first indication I'm off base is I stop doing it without realizing it, right? I stop doing it, and I'm not taking corrective measures. So if I'm taking corrective measures, as they talked about, how long would I have the same problem reoccurring all the time? Right?
Wow.
Yeah, and so in work and all that, anybody, when you get to work, you have a certain attitude towards certain foremans or certain people. You try not to involve them, but it shows up in your attitude and your energy and your demeanor, right? So that means I need to correct it, what they talked about in the fourth. I need to acknowledge this. And so I look at their position, what they're trying to do, and I acknowledge that they're trying to do their job. And my job is to be a worker amongst workers, right? And allow God to take me to better things. And so when I show back up there, my energy shifts and everything shifts. Right? So what area in my life, if I was to involve this recipe, wouldn't there be improvement in? Every single one. So the limitation is what I involve here. So then what does it say? On awakening.
Page 86, middle of the page. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives.
And that's for the day. We're asking for this acknowledgement of these pitfalls for the day. Here, also, you'd be asking, right, what amends do you want me to look after? Because remember, our job now is to be maximum service to God and the people around us. What amends do you want me to look after? What amends do you want me to address? Interesting, I'm involving God in that now, right? And be prepared for some extraordinary things to happen. Or you hear stories all the time. I haven't seen this person in 15 years. And then in your men thing says, well, you should make amends to this person. But I haven't seen them in 15 years. God says, don't worry about that. I'm asking you to be willing to make amends to this person. And then that day you run into them. Right? Like it goes on and on and on. Like whatever area that you I'm extremely bagged up and in the backyard all day, so bear with me. I think I'm talking in marbles, but hopefully I'm doing pretty good. So,
Sounds good.
so as I'm doing my nines, right, in my meditation, and I have different aspects of financial relations, I go back and look at some of the suggestions that they did, right, and counsel with another person. You got to make sure the person you're getting counsel from has had the same problem. This is about sharing our experience, strength, and hope, not our ideas, plans. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
It's about experience. What was your experience? How did you bring God into this and all that other stuff? So go ahead.
Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. For after all, God gave us brains to use.
So now you're responsible for your will and your thinking. You remember it talked about that in the fourth to the precise extent that we permit these. So the experience that I'm having in a day, I created now. Shit. Where I spent my energy, where I spent my focus, where I spent my worship, where I spent my values will determine how I feel and how my outlook upon life is. So these things are the paint by numbers, and my life is now the canvas. Does that kind of make sense? When I don't like what's happening around me, I see these things arise out of myself. So I need to change it at a spiritual level, that it changes the chemistry in my mind when I pursue a spiritual remedy here. So how many times a day am I to remind myself? Many times, constantly reminding, constantly creating a shift. Every time I interrupt myself, what do? I interrupt emotional disturbance. I'm not used to interrupting myself. I don't even like when other people interrupt me when I'm thinking. Because we do that. We're something funny about us. We go, God, I want you to direct my life and all this. And then we talk ourselves into depression. Anybody need help with that? We're all good? We talk ourselves in such a... And the phone will ring. As we're getting into this mental apparatus, right? The cheese factory, we're up there repackaging some stuff with the expiry date's gone for weeks. We're up there like just can't even stand it. The phone will ring. We'll look at the phone instead of answering it. Anybody?
Yeah.
Our partner say, why don't you phone this person? And then what we say is kind of, no, I'm not done feeding this problem because I've not got to that state of total despair yet. Crap. Okay, you'll find it funny later. Not so much when you're in it. Okay, go ahead.
Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives.
And wrong motives is instinct-based. Me, myself, and I. What can I get? How can this person serve me? What? Me, myself, and I. But if you're in counsel with something greater than you, and you're overviewing your for, meaning your conduct, your resentment and fears, you're on a different basis. The basis of trusting, relying on God. So you get to see, you know what? I was talking to a friend about this, and he was having a hard time quitting smoking because he uses it. I said, why are you having a hard time? Because you use that as a form of a solution for self. Right? When you have a problem, you go have a smoke instead of you go pray. He says, I smoke while I'm praying. Yeah, we all know that. Thank you, God. Right? So, because it creates this euphoric, so we see how we use people, places, and things as a solution to our human condition, what causes more problems. It's only a temporary relief with it, like drinking. Sooner or later, it'll all come to roost, and you'll pay for everything. That's why they say all of the suggestions are free. The only ones you pay for is the ones you don't use. Right? So it's kind of like this is your assessment where you're at and your progress based on you. Right? So before it would be I'd have emotional deformity, the human perplexity. My mind would come up with all these different things which I used to use as a solution to me. Anybody? I'd pursue that, causing more problems. So here is we'll get into that. So I'm looking at my day. It's a 24-hour clock. Okay, go ahead.
In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision.
In that moment, during the day, when you have that anxiety come up or the pause, right? We'll get into that later. How many people's had different situations during the day? And you took over and it didn't turn out good. It involves sign language and a certain, some verbal stuff, eh? You got 15 items in a 14-hour line checkout line. You lose your shit. Anybody lose their shit? Like, how easily disturbed we are. Anybody, a phone goes off in a meeting, hang them. Like, we get to see, like, anybody ever use this term? These people or this thing makes me crazy. How many people use that term? This person, this thing, or this situation makes me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
You see how the brain works? My sponsor said, no, these people, places, and things are revealing how crazy you actually are.
I don't like that.
Oh, I don't like that. It's the revealing. More will be revealed. There you go. How you liking it so far, right? The resistance has begun. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We often surprised how the right answers come after we've tried this for a while.
Tried this for a while. Right? Okay, go ahead.
What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind.
What becomes a working part of the mind? Of inviting God into it, looking for God's fingerprints in this situation. Name me, like, so when I do my step 11 at night, it says, and I have a problem, I said, was God involved in that? Or were you involved in that? Like, we're going to do weird shit. I was 20 years sober and I was having a crazy day. And this person slammed on the brake. I had a big moving truck. I'm just like, I'm going to, and I nearly slammed into him and all that other stuff. And then they got beside me and they gave me the finger. I couldn't believe it. And so Tony showed up. I rolled down the window and I just spit on him. 20 years sober, I just spit on him, right? And that's it. So I come home. I told my wife, my dad, she goes, oh, Tony showed up. Which is before I've ran people off the road, right? So, like, you know, like some of you know my background, right? That was huge. So I showed up. And when I show up, this is, my 4-step is not how I used to be. My 4-step is how I am on a non-spiritual basis, right? And that means that, and you hear people say, oh, I engaged in old behaviors. It's not old behaviors if you're still doing it. That's you unsupervised. So that night I said, where was God in this? I said, I realized, you know what? It started about 9 o'clock in the morning when I started becoming agitated. I didn't pray, didn't eat, and I became crazier and I started racing against the clock and I started having anxiety. I started looking at anxiety, right? My instincts all started going whack and there was no pause. There was no bringing God. There was no relaxation. And the farther the day went, the crazier I got until I couldn't contain it anymore. Anybody have that experience here, or is it just me? Okay, I thought, we're not saints. I thought I was in the wrong meeting there for a second. Okay. Some of you are looking at me. I've never done anything like that. You stick around. You watch the shit you do sober. You watch what you do sober. You'll surprise yourself. Believe me. Okay, go ahead.
Being still inexperienced, having just made conscious contact with God.
There it goes, reiterates. Just, when do we just make this contact? Was in step 5. So that means I'm doing this now. I mean, we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Now I get to progress, meaning, you know what, is how I used to handle things. I see in my 4 how there was a pause or a different outcome. Even though it wasn't desirable, the outcome, it was better. It was progress. Does that kind of make sense? I didn't get arrested. Nobody ended up in hospital. There was no police involved, right? That's progress. Some people would think, oh, that's crazy. No, but that's, for me, that's progress. That's on the right side of crazy, right? Okay, go ahead.
It's not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times.
True, eh? Yeah. Well, here we go.
Yeah. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas.
Anybody? I like that around relationships, eh? Us poor single people. Oh, you're sent to me by God. God, can you take it back? No. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Nevertheless, we find our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it.
So instead of being reactive, instinct-based, we become more on a plane. It's kind of like, how many people notice when you're kind of stuck in self that your sense of awareness is very shallow. Your hearing, your vision, you can't really move past to see what's happening around you. But when you're spiritually connected, you kind of catch the mountains, the birds, people. You're kind of more in tune with everything around you. Anybody know the difference between those two things?
Oh, yeah.
And what's the difference between those two experiences is you. Right? You ever wake up some days and it's just unbelievably beautiful. The whole world and everything. Then you wake up one day and it's kind of like, somebody's going to get hurt real bad. Right? It's like, yeah, I can't believe how many assholes I ran into today. Yeah, what's the common denominator? Right? So what's the difference between those two things? That's what they're getting at here. So as I move along, I like being in the plane of inspiration more than I do instinct-based.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Go ahead.
We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be. That we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only.
So self-will meaning instinct-based reactions. That's what I looked at, right? Remember they talked about as I finished, now we're going to clear the records that self-will has accumulated, right? So I see what self-will looks like absent of spiritual development or absent of this connection. So I see that, right? So remember it says, being convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. I understand what they mean by that now because I went through the same process they did, right? So we're careful never to pray. Oh, go ahead. Where you left off, sorry.
Oh, okay. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped.
Yeah, I always pray for the lottery. I'm going to help a lot of people, but nothing yet. Still.
So we be careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why.
So they just told us something that I took my sponsor to explain it. We're not praying for things. We're praying about things. And what things are we praying about? The things that are happening now. So if they're not happening now, then we defer it to later. God, give me the strength to handle it when it happens. Allow me to be present. Right? Like my nines and all that stuff. Like I had federal, like I was looking at penitentiary time. And I'd be a prisoner in the day. Right? And so God help me deal with that when I get there. And when I was in jail, it was like God waiting for bail. They'd give me bail on certain charges, not the other charges. And it took about 10 times going there. When I was in jail in Toronto, it was kind of like I was doing 12-step work. And I would say, God, if this is your will for me, give me the strength to accept whatever you have for me. Because I serve a bigger power than any power I'll ever stand before. Right? And so I was in there doing 12. People, I've never been at, like, and all the times before that, people were going, what are you doing in here? Right? I was like a bright light in this place. Like people that I used to associate and the people of my people were all going, what are you doing in here? Like, you don't fit in here. Like, what are you doing in here? I said, I'm talking to you about a new way of life, right? It was an amazing time. Anyways, I'm not looking forward to going back and reliving that anytime soon, but I was able to do what was necessary in the moment. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, if circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also.
Awesome.
If not,
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
If not members of religious bodies, We sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing.
So why would they ask us to do that? Because meditation, a lot of people think meditation is the absence of thought. You're never going to be absent of thought. There's no such thing as a void. Meditation is the ability to concentrate on something without interruption. Being able to be present. So, we have a disturbed mind based on our experience. And we're easily taken hostage to our thinking. And we spend all that energy on our thinking. So when I memorized like the Serenity Prayer or the Lord's Prayer, for me, I did the Lord's Prayer because it allowed me to concentrate, or walking on a sunlit beach, like training. So what does that mean? Like I had a lot of problems sleeping in early recovery. I don't know if anybody had that problem. I just like tormented, right? So because I had an undisciplined mind. So I remember going to my sponsor said in this meditation part, he says, I've never met anybody who's ever been able to do the Lord's Prayer 3 times in a row without falling asleep. Who's ever been able to do it 3 times in a row without falling. And I read away, yeah. So that night I did it 4 times. I went back, I did it 4. He says, no. My sponsor used to go like this to me. No, stop. Sit down. Breathe. That's how he used to talk. Gotta be. He said, stop, sit down, breathe. He'd go, breathe. You here now? Are you here? Are you here? Breathe. That's how he would talk to me in early spring. He says, now. He says, when you were doing this prayer, did you start thinking? I said, yeah. Then you didn't do it 3 times in a row. You're interrupted. He says, concentrate on the wording. And then if you get interrupted, start over again. Now, the same with reading. Meditation while reading means how many people read and think at the same time? Meditation is you read what's being presented, and if you start thinking, start over again on that paragraph. So now you're becoming disciplined. So as I did these prayers, or during the day I'd have anxiety, I'd pause, pray, do the Serenity Prayer, and think about the wording. And what I just did was interrupt, right, how I used to do things and incorporating a new way of doing things. And then when they talk about it becoming a working part of the mind, as I experience anxiety now, like I get free-floating anxiety. I don't even know where it's from. But I don't concentrate. Where is it from? Why do I have it? It's like, I don't know why. Like I'm damaged. Like there's some parts that still, like some of the wiring not working right. I know it's hard to believe looking at me, but some things no function too well, right? So I don't concentrate on that. What I do is I start memorizing the prayer to bring down my anxiety level by slowing down my thinking, my heart rate. And then coming back to where he'd have me be. If it's at work, be at work. If it's driving my car, drive my car. Like now I drive my car and I forget to put on the radio. I'm just at peace, like just driving and everything's like pretty cool most of the time. But when I get stuck on self, like, right, I need to start doing these recipes, right? Go ahead.
There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right, make use of what they offer.
And this, again, asking, okay, God, what do you want me to read? Like my sponsor suggested when I went through this course of action that I went and read Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox. It was a phenomenal book. And then I read The Power Now, right? And then I read Dan Millman, right? Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And then I read this other book, Living, Loving, and Learning, right? By Dr. Bartholomew, right? And I'd read these people's experiences, and it would disturb me until I started having them. And it was amazing. Like what these people talked about being a human being and what that looked like and how far removed I was from that, and the idea of being able to express gratitude and happiness by shedding tears, by crying as a man, like until I experienced it and I went, wow, this is cool. But that's a whole different conversation. Okay, so So prayer is your biggest asset here. Prayer, right? The pausing. God, what would you have me do? And that stuff gets wild. Okay, go ahead.
As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful.
Which is a lot. Pause when you're feeling any kind of anxiety, free-floating anxiety, any thought on yesterday, any thought on tomorrow, anything that's not happening in the moment that you're consumed with. If you were to pause, how much better would your day be?
Oh, way better.
Right? That's what they're getting. The pause is the now. Many times each day. Reminding ourselves, what did it say? Constantly remind. So if you're constantly pausing, no, we like the story, right? We're like the guy in the locomotive. We're throwing coal into that puppy, right? And the anxiety starts. And look at what happens to your body when you start having anxiety. You're not sitting up anymore. You start becoming hunched over. The anxiety, you get tightness, right? Your sense of awareness becomes, right? It's pretty wild. You become instinct based. What you're doing is becoming ready to fight or flight. Your instincts are taking over, right? So it shuts down your senses of awareness for everything else because it's an instinct, one of those instincts. So the pause instinct, there's actually 3 instincts. Pause, fight, flight, or freeze. Right? They're survival instincts. We don't have the freeze. Right? When they say freeze, you start running. Your friends are running, you just start running, and then you find out they're late for work, right? Why are you running? We're always on high alert. My wife came to a couple of meetings in a row. She says, you people are intense. I said, we call that serenity. We're always ready. We don't know what, but we're on high alert all the time, right? It's just part of like some of the step 6 stuff. Anyways, go ahead.
Oh, so again, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show.
That's a conversation in itself for the right thought or action. Would I be having the days in response to the problems I'm having in my life if I was to do this? And any problem that I have with a person, place, or thing, or disruption, or anxiety, or problematic thinking, or tremors, or night tremors, or whatever you want to call it, all the stuff we make excuses for, if I was to pause and do this, would I have had the same experience as that day of not doing it? That's interesting, isn't it? Right? So all those days I've experienced all those problems, triggers, problematic, post-traumatic stress disorder, all these things. I have a list. I have diagnosis. I have, you know what? Like I have my medical file over here. Like takes 2 drawers to put them in, right? Like it's like I've had psychiatrists just amazed with my story. That was 2 of us. Because I was attached to my story, right? So now you want me to pause and redirect and have a different experience? What an order. So that's another thing on step 11. If I was to pause, would I have had the same experience that day as I did? If I was to see if I was to be of service, what I could put into the situation instead of what I got out of it. Would I have had the same experience? If I showed up at my home group or the meeting 15, 20 minutes earlier looking for a new person, would I have had the same experience? Interesting, right? The phone, central office, how can I be of service? When I break up my week, how much time am I giving back to AA and the people in the world around me? Or am I still taking? Am I still a taker, or am I seeing what I could contribute to life? At the end of the day, how many hours did I spend in prayer and meditation compared to how many hours I spent alone unsupervised with myself? Would I have a different experience if I was to incorporate this more on a daily basis? Interesting. Okay, go ahead.
Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day.
Humbly, meaning the acknowledgement of the need of this power or this relationship to have a different experience than what I've been having. Right? Because that's all. So get excited. This is the game changer. This is the raise we've been looking for. This is the new job, new career. This is the new experience in life that we've been looking for outside of ourselves that is now present, that you have access to cultivate and develop. So what is like mining, all we're doing is scratching the surface. It pays dividends on a daily basis. Far more than you could ever receive. So the only limitation on the receiving of what's available is our resistance to it. There's far more left on the table than we ever receive. I'll leave that with you. You think about that, right? Go ahead.
We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions.
I used to think, excitement, what's the matter with that? Then you realize it's also a diversion, getting all, right? Okay, go ahead.
Getting revved up. We become much, much more efficient. We do not tire so easily. We are not burning energy foolishly.
So
we did when we were trying.
So if you notice the wording there, you notice it didn't say resentment.
Mm-hmm.
It said fear, which is the basis, right? Excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, and foolish decisions. So we see fear is the evil and curling thread that precedes everything. Then anger, then resentment. When we cultivate it and harbor it, right, or carrying stuff. Okay, go ahead.
We become much more efficient. Do not tire so easily. We are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined.
Okay, so hold it. We're undisciplined. So what that means is our brain dictates and our emotions dictate how we feel and think. That's what they mean by undisciplined. It like our mind is like a unsupervised 6-year-old running rampant in the house.
Yeah.
Right? Knocking over, screaming, being a little shit, nobody's saying nothing. And you're thinking to parents, are you going to do something about that kid? Or am I going to do something about that kid? Right? That's our thinking. Are you going to do something about your thinking? That's what they mean by undisciplined. Go ahead.
So we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined.
So that's not punishing. Discipline us means this is the spiritual disciplines that move us into spiritual progress. This is step 11. Spiritual disciplines. The pausing, the stopping, the reevaluating, the reassessing. What could I have done differently? How could I bring spiritual? How could I be of help? How could I add instead of take? How could I change these harboring, these feelings, ideas, and emotions? How can I see God's fingerprints more in my life instead of my own? Right? That's what they mean. We're undisciplined. So in the simple way we just outlined. So they just outlined step 11. Step 11 is the only step that we're meant to work on a daily basis. And that goes into 12. If I'm seeing how I can be of service, so there's only one thing. You got your driver's license? Okay. Let's get busy. Let's get excited. Yeehaw. That's step 11. It's not about working on you. Stop it. You're not qualified. Right? Go ahead.
But this is not all. There's action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12.
Read that this week. Why do they say action and more action? Because our job is to be of service. We're doing amends, we're helping other people, and we're practicing these principles now. So technically, the only step that really is 11 is the change. 12 is the carrying this message forward. It's a whole different conversation. Anyways, I'll get into that later. Live long and prosperous. I hope you guys enjoyed today. I ended up